The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com. And good morning. Welcome, dear listeners, to the Old School podcast about primarily the American education system, though from time to time we do venture out into other topics, as we will today. And in this endeavor, my good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, Dr. Bourgeois.
Here, Miller. There you are. You seem to be kind of chipper in a great mood. You look your eyes look more awake than usual. There's some. I mean, normally you're just kind of dragging in. But what's happening? Why are you so alert and perky?
I've been up for a while. One, two, I had a decent breakfast, and I've got coffee coming. My lovely bride said that she would bring coffee up here as I was recording.
Okay.
It's so hard to find good help these days, but and so the other thing is that I've made a decision. So as people know who listened to last week's episode, we moved, and I was trying to debate whether I should put up my books or not, because we may change out the floor in this room in a couple of months, and I decided I need my bookcases up, and so I've made a decision. The unpacking of the books has begun, and now putting together bookcases, and so pretty soon this room is going to look pretty squared away.
Well, that's always fun, putting the books up. Even though you have to put them down, I think it's a good choice because it looks strange there on the screen without your normal backdrop.
So in general, in the house, there is an issue. The issue is twofold. One, we have long walls and we have high ceilings. The ceiling in this room is about 12 foot tall. I swear it's 12, 15 feet tall. And so the question is not just how to decorate your room, but how to decorate it so that it looks symmetrical in lieu of, with the very high ceilings and the long walls. And so my wife, you've heard of the minimalist approach?
Yeah.
One thing or something like that.
Yeah.
So apparently, as there should be, as there would be, there's a maximalist approach where you just coat an entire wall full of whatever. And so we've done that in one of the rooms. One of the rooms, it looks good, sort of. The other room, I'm not quite sure I bought into the technique yet, but that's what is on my mind on this Saturday. So,
well, a little clutter is a show of creativity.
Well, that makes sense. Since I have no creativity, it makes sense that I do not prefer clutter. Now, I don't need a room to be spick and span. It's not like I'm going through my house with white gloves, checking random shelves or anything. Like Robert Duvall and the Great Santini. Checking to make sure all the kids' rooms are clean.
Wow.
But at the same time, I just don't want clutter. And so, to me, clutter makes me anxious.
Okay.
There, I said it.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that. I can remember visiting a professor, a philosophy professor, and on his desk were books just laid out, and then on top of each other. And I don't know where he would actually work, but it was just full of the books that he was working with. And I like that idea because you're actively, working on many things at once, and you're doing the labor. And if you just had everything, hidden on the bookshelf, you can't get any work done.
It's not hidden. All of the books are facing outward so you can see the titles. It takes 2 seconds to take a book off from the desk and put it back in its proper place on the bookshelf. I'm not Felix Unger. I mean, I'm not some sort of obsessive compulsive, but Jesus, God Almighty, just take the book and put it back on the shelf. To me, that would stress me out. If I was sitting at a desk that had like a pile of 15 books on either side,
Yeah,
that stressed me out.
that's really interesting, Herr Miller. Now I'm learning more about your what would you call it? Your psychology, something else. It's a sort of a sickness. What would you call that?
Psychosis.
Your psychosis, pathology, whatever it is, you have it.
Well, I'm sure I'd be fun on somebody's couch, but that's probably not going to. But who knows? I don't know. Well, today we're getting into a very interesting topic, and I'll tell you what made me think of it. So there's two podcasts that I listen to, one on a regular basis, one on a kind of a infrequent basis. And in both podcasts, the topic of etiquette came up. And typically, if there's anything that's going to show a person's age faster, it is the expectation of etiquette. And, some people have an expectation that people should do certain things or behave in certain ways in public. Um, and it even goes into the home life. But the idea that there is a expectation of behavior that should be followed by everybody. And of course, in this world where everything is relative, there is no absolutes, which I don't abide by. But a lot of people think that it makes sense that etiquette would go by the wayside. To what degree were your folks? How much did they impress upon you issues or standards of etiquette?
Well, tell me which areas. You mentioned the topic, and I wasn't sure what type of etiquette. I'm familiar with tennis etiquette, maybe dining etiquette, golf etiquette. So what domain are you talking about in the home?
I think when we're talking about etiquette, we're talking about social etiquette, the way we interact with other people,
Mhm.
the way that we interact with our surroundings, not necessarily etiquette as far as not making loud noises during a tennis match or a golf tournament or something like that, but rather how we interact with one another and how do we carry ourselves? How do we comport ourselves? And this tends to be the type of etiquette that most people get riled up about. You may see some old codger at the US Open going, damn kids are too loud, gotta be quiet. But I'm talking mainly just about how we comport ourselves like in the store or, with elders or whatever the case may be.
I'm still having trouble wrapping my mind around this because I need to create specific examples. I mean, you need to remember that I grew up in the 70s, essentially, which was pretty laid back as far as the laissez-faire type. So we didn't get whacked on the back of the head if we picked up a fork in the wrong grip or something. Um,
I'm not talking about high society. I'm not just I'm
well,
talking about the difference between a dinner fork and a salad fork. I'm just talking about, for example, both of us are in the South, but both of us also did not grow up in the South. And so the notion of saying yes, sir, or no, ma'am, or things of that nature. My thought is that you've never been encumbered by those requirements.
oh my, yeah. In Oregon, when I grew up, it was always first name. I never said sir. I never said ma'am until I moved to Texas when I was much older. And even the students a lot of times would call their teachers by their first name.
That's crazy.
No, it's true. It happened all the time, particularly the younger teachers.
No, I believe you. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So in Germany, there is a practice by which, when speaking of someone who's not present, der Miller,
The
or
yeah, the
you know,
Miller, right.
yeah, the Miller, which I always prefer being preceded by the definite article. So I'm all for that. I like that. I just assume they do it to my face, actually. But in Germany, Der Miller, Der Burgess, D Miller, if it's my wife or something along those lines. Uh, and for whatever reason, the students I was with, so my colleague was named Bonnie. And so for whatever reason, the kids started calling her D Bonnie, using the feminine definite article in German and using Bonnie. And she said, would y'all ever say Der Ross? And they said, oh, no.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't occur to anybody. There's always one. There's always one kid. And it's always a boy. It's never a girl. There's always one boy
But
who has a wild hair.
yeah, push the envelope, take poke the bear, or see what happens.
Yeah. And so there's always that person. But on the whole, nobody does that. And I was kind of caught in a kind of two different worlds. So I was living in Maryland, but I had a mother from the South. And so you never called any of my parents' friends by their first name. That would be if you talk to them at all. I mean, it wasn't even expected I should be talking to them unless they asked me a direct question. But certainly, you know, say Mr. or Mrs., whatever their last name is.
Hmm.
But that's not so when a friend of your father or a friend of your mother's came over, you just called them Jan or whatever their name was.
Yeah, if I used their name at all, it was always the first name.
So my wife gave me hell because when we started becoming friends with people who had kids, and it didn't really happen until after we had a kid
Uh,
because we need commiseration. But you know, whenever I would meet their kids, and Jim would go, "Oh, hi, I'm Jen," and I say, "Hi, I'm Mr. Miller." I don't need a 6-year-old coming up to me and go, "Hey, Ross,
well,
got something I want to run by you." Well, watch.
you did that with my kids, and they still call you Ross.
They call me
and
Ross now because they're adults,
no,
But
they
I mean,
always. My daughter would cackle. She thought it was funny.
that's because they weren't raised right. But I mean, I introduced myself as Mr. Miller, and my wife gave me hell about it. But then later, I was like, there's a reason why you do that. So there's a great line in McClintock when someone comes up to John Wayne and says, "Hey, McClintock," he says, "Well, there was a time when people your age would call me Mr. McClintock." That there's the familiarity is what is the problem there.
Okay,
But
that's
you don't have an issue with it.
not really, but I don't like it when people call me Mister anymore. With a but I don't feel like I want to correct a kid who will call me Mr. Bourgeois or something. But I don't know. I'm not used to hearing it, and so it kind of sets me back. I don't like it when I get an email from some administrative assistant and they use Mister, even though my title is on the signature. So that it does annoy me a little bit when it happens.
So, is there a point of etiquette as far as social interaction that does get on your nerves if people don't follow it? Given that you grew up in the I'm okay, you're okay 70s, I mean, is there a realm of etiquette that you expect people to follow? I have one in mind that I think that I know you do. I don't know if you maybe think of it as etiquette, but
Well, I'm thinking about cell phones, and I think it's in general. I don't like it when I'm talking to somebody, looking at them and they're texting and continuing to text or multitasking. I guess I
right.
find that uh, difficult, and so I think we work through that with our kids, particularly at the dinner table. But I think it goes, it's so prevalent. It happens all the time, and I think that's the big one for me.
So phones are not allowed at the dinner
Yeah, maybe I don't like confiscate them, but uh,
table.
unless we're showing each other memes or something, and I don't know what a meme is yet, but they're showing some things and laughing, and I've never found anything funny or even know what the hell a meme is. But yeah, sometimes it comes up and then the phones get out.
In your mind, should anyone bring anything to the dinner table other than a plate and a fork?
An appetite. That's it.
An appetite. That's it.
Yeah.
No book.
No, no, that would be just the same thing. Somebody, but I mean, some cliche couples would have both be reading the newspaper, and I think that to me that seems okay, not with a family there, but if there are like two people, you can have a newspaper, but the phone, I don't know. I'm people are battling the phones now in schools. It's sort of the same issue, and
Mm.
we tried to fight that when we were both teaching, and it's come to this, and it hasn't gotten any better.
The one of the school districts near us has taken the rather bold approach to ban cell phones altogether. And just to make it interesting, not only have they banned cell phones for students, but also for teachers as well.
I didn't know that part. That's those are fighting words.
So now you have your kids like turning in their teachers, because if they don't like their teacher, like, well, he's on a cell phone for like 20 minutes during class.
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
not talking about like in between classes or during their off time, but talk about during class time instruction. You're not the adults are not to have their phones out.
wow. Well, that's a wrinkle in that at my company, A Heart Solutions, is having a negotiation with a company that has these pouches that you wear on your person, but they're locked, and so they give each student one and they lock it at the beginning of the day, and then it gets unlocked at the end. I mean, it would be funny if they did that for faculty as well. Um, but I mean, people have told me that if that would happen, students would put their burner phone in the pouch, keep their other one with them. But I don't know. I mean, having the teachers attend just like the students makes sense on a certain level. You'd have to have the administrators do the same thing, but they would communicate with walkie-talkies, which most do anyway.
They bust out the old speaker system again.
I hate those. Mr. Burgess, your grades are due in 1 hour. I hated that.
Well, one of the things I think about with you, and that is your expectation of your kids to greet people when they walk through the door,
Mhm.
shake hands. I mean, you'll even call your kids down from upstairs or whatever back wing of your house that you have.
Yeah.
Usually takes them about 20 minutes to make it to the front door, but the idea that they shake your hand and say hello, how you doing, and stuff like that, and it goes to when Greta was quite young. You know, I read somewhere that everyone always mentions the magic word as please or thank you. But that please or thank you is the result of someone getting what they want, but rather also mandating that kids should say hello and goodbye
Mhm.
is a recognition that other interests are in the room. And so that there is a recognition by the kid, whether they take it or not, or whether they adhere to it or not, but that there has to be a recognition that someone else has entered and that as a point of
Mhm.
etiquette, you should greet them.
That's a good one. And yeah, I think I did learn that from my parents, particularly leaving a room, you don't, or the house, you always announce that you're leaving. But it's very German. I think we both like that. Even if you walk into a restaurant with strangers, you don't just walk by them like all Americans would do. You make eye contacts and you say a word, and then the same thing as you leave. You don't make a big deal of it and wave at everybody and say keep in touch or something. But it's completely un-American, that. But it's rather nice. I mean, because you're acknowledging the presence, which is a sacred thing, the individual, and you give a nod.
Mhm. Well, it's definitely something that I set up out to teach my daughter. She did it for a while. She's now gotten into a phase where she's like in her room. She's in her room a lot, or she And so it's like getting her out of her room to come down and greet somebody. And so it is something that I have tried to do. I think I don't always remember to do it if Greta doesn't happen to be there at the moment that someone walks in the door. But it's something that I am trying to endeavor to impress upon her is the importance of saying hello and goodbye to people.
Yeah, I like that. I do remember always getting them when you come over. I mean, you're basically family at
Yeah.
the same time, but also for them, I want to make the impression that you're an honored guest. You come in and you don't just say, "Oh, Ross is here, great."
We'll be in their TV room.
Yes.
We'll be watching the game. Um, what about the idea? So I was listening to a podcast called The Dish. It's with Angela Hartnett, who is a Michelin star chef, and a BBC presenter by the name of Nick Grimshaw. And they have people on. They talk about food. They talk about whatever they want to talk about. But they had on Stanley Tucci one time. And do you know who he is?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. I think you're about to insult him because of his politics or something. You have that look.
I don't know his politics, but I can
Oh,
presume his politics. But
okay, but he's a really 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 good actor.
he's a very good actor, and he's really into Italy. He lives there for part of the year. But he talked about the idea that when you go to the dinner table, you go dressed. Now he took it a step further where he says he cannot be barefooted, in the house. He said he's got to have shoes on and what have you, and so he'll even go to the table with nice shoes on, but he'll get dressed to go to the dinner table. To me, that's a very kind of an old fashioned idea. And I don't know anybody who does that. Is that something that you were exposed to as a kid? Is that something that you've ever heard about?
No, I mean I mean just thinking back, I don't think I mean I dress pretty casually. I mean in the house, and I don't
Yes.
remember my dad walking around with a white t-shirt and shorts all day for about 40 days in a row or something. So maybe
That's
taking a
called
little.
depression.
That's right. Um, but I think in general things are a little bit formal, but the difference to me is that we had people over for dinner a lot, you know,
Hmm.
and so in that case, yeah, you would dress a little bit, you'd put a collar on or something, but you wouldn't just come as you are. When you had
Would you wear shoes with guests in the house?
yeah, probably, but yeah, but if it's just your family, no. I mean, then
Right.
at least what we've done as parents, no, you just get to the table and eat as you are. We never talk about what you're wearing.
Right. I remember my father would come home from the machine shop, and usually my mother would plan the meal to hit right as he came home.
Hmm.
So my father ate the way he worked. He was in the same attire,
Yeah.
and so he was in these dark dungarees and kind of kind of almost jean material like collared shirts
Hmm.
because that's what he wore. Because you can't wear loose clothing around machinery, so it's not like people are like wearing, flurry, fluffy things. I think he's wearing practical work clothes. And so that's what he always wore. And that does kind of create a feeling that you shouldn't necessarily be in t-shirts and shorts while you're eating. But as you say, there's a difference between having guests over and just eating amongst family.
So what about in schools? So we talked a little bit about cell phones, but you're one who will insist on things from students, and as far as decorum and etiquette, at least in your classroom. What are those things that you'll definitely actively correct somebody?
I think the first thing is that if anyone walks into my classroom with a hat, take
With
the
the
hat off.
Oh, the hat. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Tony Soprano talking to the kid who goes to the Italian restaurant with a ball cap on. He goes, "What do you think you are at the ballpark? Take your hat off. What are you doing?" And so, the idea that when you are in a proper place or when you're in a place of business, you take your hat off. And I can't think of a building I would wear a hat in. If the only time I would wear a hat inside of a building is when I go to the ballpark. I mean, outside of that, that's about it. Certainly you would never go into a church or a synagogue or a mosque or any place like that with a hat on. That seems disrespectful.
So you did that in the classroom. What else would happen?
Well, one of the things that and this was a pet peeve of mine, but it comes down to etiquette. And that is people who start a conversation by asking me something. So I would have kids that would come into the classroom and it would be the first time I've seen them that day. And they would immediately launch into a question or a petition for a favor or something along those lines. And usually I'd let them finish and I would say, "Good morning. How are you?" And almost without fail, there's a couple of sociopaths that didn't pick up on the social cues, but for the most part, you could see the tinge of embarrassment as they are reminded of what they did not do. And of course, a lot of them would be kind of sheepish and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Good morning. How are you doing, sir?" And they would go through that process, and then we can get to the question. But it's to me, it's rude to start any conversation with somebody by demanding an answer to a question, or even when I was a department chair and I had to tell teachers to do something, I wouldn't walk in and that would be the first thing I'd lead with. You have a proper conversation. It doesn't have to be long or drawn out, but you ask people how they're doing. You ask people how their day is, whatever it is. So you just don't start or you don't make a conversation solely about what you need.
Well, some colleges, I'm thinking about Texas A&M. I don't know if you've spent much time there, but they have standards for the not just the core cadets, but the whole student body. And these it's a little bit unnerving because you're not used to it, but the students will look you in the eye and greet you and
Mhm.
it's how you're doing, and they'll always hold the door for you. I mean, any adult, but they greet the people who are visiting constantly. And it makes an impression.
It's interesting. I remember Cal Ripken Jr., the famous Oriole baseball player, said that his father taught him that you shake hands, you look them in the eye, and you don't let go until they looked you in the eye. And I remember it struck me because it was something my dad taught me. When you shake someone's hand, you look them in the eye. It's a form of recognition. Not only is it a form of greeting, that's the handshake, but it's a recognizing that you're dealing with another human being and that they're worthy of your attention. So you look them in the eye and you let them know that you see them. And for people who don't do this may sound silly. It may sound pedantic, but I'm telling you that there's a value there
Hmm.
in looking somebody in the eye.
Yeah, I think the handshake has sort of gone away a little bit. I mean, they're big on that in Germany. Lots of
Mhm.
handshaking going on. The fist bump is it's so casual. It has that feel to it. I know that people did that during COVID or the little elbow thing, but I think
Mhm.
it's probably time to bring back the handshake, as it had a lot of meaning to it, and it wasn't just a man thing. I mean, everybody
Mm.
did that, and I think that it sets a tone, for the interaction.
It sets a tone, but it also sets the boundaries of the interaction. Because I remember, and this has happened before. We've talked about it before. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not, but you know, nowadays everyone wants to give hugs, and I'm not a hugger. I don't want anyone to hug me. And there's been a couple of occasions where, it's not like boys do this, but girls, they'll do hugs, and it's always a bit it always kind of unsettles them a little bit when I know they're going in for a hug for whatever reason, and I stick out my hand, and they have to make an immediate adjustment because, like I said, to me, it's not just a form of greeting, but it's also setting the boundaries of whatever conversation we're about to have. And that is you approach me differently than you may approach somebody else, especially if it's a student. No student should be approaching me as if we're buddies, you know. My I've talked about it on here before. My thing is you be friendly, but you're not friends. And so you shake hands. And for my students, they got a big kick out of it because, I would always do a handshake on their birthday. Otherwise, we wouldn't necessarily have an interaction, a physical interaction, but when we did, it was a handshake. And the kids appreciated it because they knew it was something, because everyone does hugs. So it doesn't mean anything. But I think when you do a reserved handshake, I think over time the kids get it. Hey, this is something different. This is something important. They want, kids who had a birthday on the weekend, they wanted to make sure that they told me that I knew that they had a birthday so they could get a handshake.
Wow, that's pretty nice. Uh, I might start recommending that. It sounds like there's this cooking show, British Bake Off or something, where occasionally, very rarely, maybe twice a season, the guy named Paul Hollywood, he'll give a handshake when he likes something, and it means more than even winning that day. I
Yeah.
got the handshake. But I think actually in a few days from when we're recording this, there's going to be a presidential debate, and I remember the last presidential debate for a lot of reasons. But I was shocked and dismayed and really angered that there was no handshake before or after the debate. And I don't think there will be this time. Maybe there will, but if there's any positive outcome that's going to come from this thing, I hope that happens because it sends a message to everybody, and it's not just about them. And it really hurts that may not happen.
It hurts. And it also goes to something that people have bemoaned about for some time, rightfully so. And that is the lack of uh, a lack of manners. It shows a lack of, um, the idea that this is more than about politics. This is about two human beings coming together, and whether you like one or dislike the other, or worse yet, you hate one, which is, I always shake my head when I hear someone use the word hate. I said, that's a very odd choice of words, but there's a civility to the idea of shaking hands. And if two adults can't manage civility of shaking hands, then I don't know what the hell we're doing. It's like, what is the point of this? And as I said, if the handshake creates the boundaries of the conversation, a lack of it suggests that there could be no boundaries,
Right.
and people will say and do anything if they think that they win at the end. So,
Yeah. I mean, even something as brutal as boxing, where people are bashing each other's brains in after the final bell, they'll shake hands or hug or do
yeah.
something, really an acknowledgement. And about 99.5% of the time, coaches, quarterbacks meet at midfield. And I always like it. It warms my heart when I see that. And I always hope that the camera will show that because
Mm,
it's communicating something, particularly to kids, high school football players. I mean,
mm.
to just stay in sports a little bit, all these celebrations and things. We've talked a little bit about that. Um, but it just shows how we've blurred these lines of etiquette. Um, it should be more respectful, I think. And so I always like it, at least when the camera shows it, because I think that's a good choice by the networks to show the handshake.
Mm. Do you think it's a sign that you and I are, to a certain degree, passe in our expectations of people, that these standards of etiquette, while important to us, are no longer relevant in a modern 21st century world? Or do you think that's just an excuse that people say to excuse poor behavior?
We kind of have these little arms and walk around like dinosaurs. I think that's sort of what we are. But I don't know what's gonna follow us. But I mean, we're curmudgeons now, and we're not that old. It's only gonna get worse.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what's going to become of that, but I mean, it is something that I'm drawn to. And when I said the no hat thing or the addressing people, is that what you were talking about with my expectations in the classroom? I didn't know if there was something specific that you had observed in the past that I did,
Um, yeah, I
or
think
maybe
that's,
not.
I mean, I know that sometimes another student who's not in your class will walk in and you don't necessarily think that they should just be able to walk in and go talk to another student. I mean, you'll stop
No.
them in their tracks.
Oh yeah, and I'll stop down in the classroom, and then when that kid walks out admonished, I'll say something to his friend. I said, "Does your friend know that it's not how you walk into a classroom?" And his friend will get kind of sheepish.
Yeah.
And I can imagine the conversation later when those two get together. Don't do that again. Don't walk into his classroom, you know, because students know that there are some teachers that have so little control of their classroom that they could just walk in, talk to their friend, and then walk out without nary a word being said to them. But that's my classroom. And anyone who walks in it's going to know it, you know. So,
Okay. Okay. And a student can't just get up and go to the restroom. And
so here's the thing about that. So when I was young, meaning young as a teacher, I was a big believer that everyone had to sign out and do all the rigmarole just to go to the bathroom. Going to the bathroom is a fairly human function. And so for me, especially in the latter half of my career, I would say just make eye contact, do a little wave of the hand and head off to the bathroom. But listen, there's no reason to call attention to it. I mean, there's no reason to make a big deal about it. You gotta go to the bathroom, got to go to the bathroom, you know. The only time I would have an issue with it is if someone wanted to go to the bathroom, leave the classroom during a test. You know, then I might have something to say about it. But other than that, I mean, that was always one thing. You know I've mentioned this before, but I remember Wade Phillips when he was named head coach of the Cowboys. Someone asked him how is he going to manage all the big egos and the big money that goes with coaching modern day football players. And he had an amazing answer. He said, "My job's not to manage them. My job is to work with them." And it showed a level of equality that I don't necessarily think there exists between a teacher and a student, but it does show that this doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship between the teacher and the student. And, bathroom is not something that you make a stand on. Someone's got to go to the bathroom, they got to go to the bathroom, Don't embarrass them by making it a big deal. And so for me, it is kind of a working with students, but that's something that I kind of let go, towards the end. And I don't know if that's a big deal or not, but it's something that I thought in the end wasn't something to make an issue of.
yeah, I think that's a good policy. I mean, some kids would get that hall pass and go parading, where they
Well, those kids is a different story. Yeah, if you're going to go take a tour of the school every time you go to the bathroom, you pick the bathroom furthest away from the classroom, then that's a different story. Then you've chosen not to act like an adult. And when you choose not to act like an adult, then I get to choose not to treat you like an adult, and then we have different standards. I have one kid. You didn't ask him. I said, well, he doesn't go take a tour of the school. He doesn't go visit other friends and other classes. So, so yeah, I treat people differently. So,
that's good. Well,
well, there's another issue. I was
yeah.
listening to Leanne Morgan. She's a comedian, and she was on the Nate Land podcast with Nate Bargatze, the comedian. And they were talking about etiquette. This is what gave me the idea to bring up the subject. But she mentioned that she was in a hotel. She was staying the night. She was some sort of convention or what have you, and that the fire alarm went off, and everyone had to leave their rooms, come down into the lobby. And so when she heard the fire alarm and she got the word that she's supposed to come down to the lobby, she got dressed because it was in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And so she got dressed. And she said when she walked downstairs, there were people that were barely dressed. They were in their pajamas almost. She said there was a lot of girls that weren't wearing bras, they're just, they just basically made no attempt to get dressed before leaving their room. And she thought, and I'm kind of curious how you think about this. She thought it was kind of a lack of etiquette that when you're going amongst other people, particularly people that you don't know, that you get dressed. Now, you may say that that's an extreme circumstance because it's a fire alarm. Do you really have time to put on a bra or to, to put on, underwear or whatever the case may be? But her point was is that, you do that when you are in that kind of situation. Would you have an issue with something like that?
Wow. I mean, if it's an actual real fire alarm and you can see smoke and everything, I mean, it's just that sounds sort of silly, but I think as little as possible as far as what you would put on, put
Mhm,
on some shorts and a shirt and get out of there. Um,
mhm.
so I think it's a weird example that I mean, what was the point she was making? Just that she didn't want to appear in front of people, even though everybody else is really casual at that point.
Well, I think for her, I think her standards was just that you just don't leave the house without a certain minimum of certain kind of clothing. And she thought it was interesting that some people simply just did not have that foresight. I mean, no one smelled smoke, no one saw smoke. I mean, that doesn't mean there's not a fire. That doesn't mean you don't try to get out as quickly as possible. I think in her mind, though, because I mean, she broadened the example out by saying this isn't just a question of a fire alarm at 2 o'clock in the morning. She says you go to Walmart, you'll see the exact same thing.
Interesting.
And the question is, does that, you know, so it's not like people were taking a stand by saying, "Hey, there's a fire. I'm going to go out without my bra, or I'm going to go out without underwear, or whatever the case may be." But it was a question of, people in general, just out and about, do not do certain things that have always been kind of expected.
Yeah, that has changed. That casualness, depending on where you go, Walmart is certainly one of the more casual things you could see. But I mean,
You're trying hard to find the right word there.
uh, no, I'm not going to be mean, but I don't like to. Well, I don't like to go shopping anyway. And I really didn't like going Christmas shopping back when people actually went to stores for Christmas shopping. I remember I think my boys to some department store. We were going to get a purse or something. And I told them this is going to be really difficult. There's going to be all these people walking around. We're getting a purse. Don't make any eye contact. We're going to walk right to the purse. We're going to get it. We're going to get in line, not talk, look straight ahead and get out of here as quickly as possible.
Did they abide by those
Oh
rules?
yeah, yeah. I said, okay, they understood. Yeah, this is going to be bad.
I think they call that agoraphobia.
I have a lot of phobias, sure. But that's one of
I
them.
Yeah, I do wonder though about the formality and I blame the hippies. The hippies were the
Hippies?
ones. Yeah, I mean they're the ones that introduced because prior to the counterculture movement, jeans were work clothes. They were not clothes that you walked out
Hmm.
and ran errands in. My grandmother would get completely dressed in a nice dress and makeup just to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
She did not believe in just throwing on some pants and a shirt and going out to the grocery store. She did her hair. She used her aerosol hairspray and took out about 2% of the ozone layer to make
Yep.
sure her hair was properly, set. And she would put on makeup and I remember thinking, what a strange thing to do. But in her mind, she thought if you're going to be going out in the public, you go out with your best foot forward. And I think at the very least, it can be said that not many people put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
Would you think of that as a point of etiquette?
I don't know this. I mean, etiquette has to do with the standards that are around you.
Mm.
And so now somebody doing that is an outlier. Some people do, but most people are, you know, at all grocery stores, particularly, you see a lot of people just in shorts and a t-shirt, as simple as possible.
So does that mean that all the stuff that we have talked about thus far are no longer points of etiquette?
Well, it definitely changes. I mean, it's different than it was in the 18th century and
Yeah.
and before that. So yeah, I think it changes. I mean, not we can't say that it's changing for the well, we're pretty much making the point that it's changing for the worse, but it is changing, and
Yes.
and all these things we can't hold back the flood, even though that seems to be our task in life. we're we're a beacon of restraint in a world of car crazies.
It does make it interesting when we do push back. We talked about before how when I was in charge of the exchange, I kept your rule that people wore business dress on the flight over to Germany. And people, when I first bring it up, people think I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. It's like it's a it's about a respect for your purpose. It's about a respect for the people that you're visiting. It's a respect to the purpose of the exchange, and that doesn't mean that someone who doesn't wear business casual is being disrespectful. It's just my mannerism matched yours in that I felt that that was the least you could do. You know, was dress not to the nines, but I mean, put on a pair of slacks. Put on a collared shirt. Why would that be inherently uncomfortable?
I agree. And we need to remember that this exchange program originated in 1960. So I was following 1960s etiquette. I carried it on and passed it to you, and you continued it. And I wonder, because the exchange is moving forward, will there be a blazer on each of the young men, and are the young women, ladies, dressed up for a
There's not
flight?
a chance. No.
So, okay.
But it reminds me of there's a comedian named Sebastian Maniscalco, and he talks about people basically wearing pajamas and taking off their shoes on a flight, and he can't abide by that level of informality because one, it's gross walking around a plane without shoes on. It's gross, especially if you walk into the bathroom, and so there's a lot of things going on that's gross. People clipping toenails in their seats. You know, the hell are you doing? There's a, there's a. I think that we have lost a lot of etiquette, and I think it's a problem because where do you stop things from deteriorating? How do you stop things from deteriorating?
Yeah, I think we've lost control of that, and the social media, the cell phones, all this is working against us. It creates this casualness of interaction. It's so easy to interact with people online that you don't need that type of formality, and certainly the language, of social media is really really casual. You don't have that respectful tone,
Mm,
and people feel
certainly.
like they can say anything about anybody, even real important people, or they in person, they would have some respect probably. So I think it kind of trickles into our real interactions.
So would you say that that's the element of your personal etiquette that makes you come across as old as possible? Do you think that's the thing that really is that the thing that most sets you apart from the younger generation, or is there something else as we come to a close on this discussion about etiquette?
I prefer to measure myself with others by height. Uh, but I mean I really hate cell phones and social media. I mean, desperately. And,
Mm.
and and one of my goals in life, which sounds easy, but to really get rid of the cell phone, and I wish that everybody would join me in the world with a better place. So I'm pushing back on the technology, but I think that's the real culprit that's solidifying this lack of etiquette.
It's really interesting to see how the experiment goes with the local school district who decided to ban cell phones. There have been many school districts around the country who have done the same. And while there's been a lot of grumbling, certainly at the beginning, and grumbling may be putting it nicely, parents who said, I expect to be able to get a hold of my kid 24/7, that sort of thing. We'll call the office,
Mhm.
but on the whole, from what I've seen, studies, interviews done with students say at the end of the school year that they found that they got more out of school. And it's not surprising. I mean, if you don't have a constant distractor hanging over your shoulder like a the bad angel on one shoulder, you're likely going to get more out of school. From a student point of view, I get it. Even from the teacher point of view, I get it because and I know that there are teachers that are just mailing in their job and spending a lot of time on their computer or on their phone during class. And, some people may say this doesn't treat teachers like professionals. I would suggest there's teachers that are not acting like professionals. And so sometimes someone feels the need to pass this kind of rule. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens to these classes, especially the teachers that are used to just throwing some technology up on the screen and keeping the kids busy for like 20 minutes. What do they do? You know?
I'm intrigued. I mean, some states are talking about banning cell phones in schools, and that would take the pressure off, the principals to enforce something.
Hmm.
It's now
Yeah.
on the books. But the other thing is the change in school culture, and you look at the discipline incidents, the fighting, all of that is sparked by this drama that probably starts the night before and it goes all through the day, and then they're actually together at lunchtime. All these forces are built into that phone that create this drama that is much more interesting than what's happening in your history class. And that's happening with every student all day. So I think it's a profound effect, and I'm really behind it. I don't usually get behind too many initiatives, but I think this one, has so many positive effects, and it gets rid of negative effects. And on the teacher side, it could create better teachers also.
Yeah, it's not like these kids are watching TikTok videos of babbling brooks through quiet woods. They're watching people screaming at each other and what have you. And so it's not surprising that some kids' behaviors seem at times to be unhinged. And it's because of what they are ingesting as far as, social media and phones and what have you. So who knows? This could be the movement that brings back some elements of etiquette, especially as it relates to teacher student interactions, adult children interactions. Never know.
Yeah, no, we need something to change back, and we're always going to say it was better in the past. I mean, there was a lot of things that were really difficult, but this one seems pretty easy. That this is a problem that we've kind of let it out of the box.
Well, let's see if we can't get back into it, and let's see if we can't get to the couch, watch a little college football.
I'm going to do
I think
that.
Oregon is playing the Holy Order of Saint Mary the Week. Who are they playing this week?
No, they're playing Boise State, another powerful team out of Idaho.
Oh yes, they lost to that powerhouse Vandals team of
They
the
didn't.
University of Idaho last week.
They won by 10 points.
They
They didn't
struggled.
lose.
They escaped Idaho with a 10-point victory.
Well, they just forgot to bring their offensive line.
He's almighty.
Yeah.
At least they weren't robbed by refs who disallowed a touchdown in the last second against the Chiefs.
Oh,
I don't know what. Clearly, the referees have been told by the NFL, whatever you do, make sure the Chiefs are undefeated at the end of the year. So the
so
Ravens were robbed.
they were robbed by 2 inches of toe in the outside of the end zone. I mean, it was one of the more clear overrules you're ever going to see.
More clear that it wasn't a touchdown.
Yeah, his foot was. I mean, he had about an inch and a half of toe on the line.
It
And
had to do with the camera angle. You didn't see the other angles. He was clearly in bounds.
oh my God. We're going to re-adjudicate the Kennedy assassination next.
Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
We need to get out of here, Hermela.
All right, fine. Let's go. Done. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We appreciate it. We have gone to weekly shows. We'll see how long this lasts. But nevertheless, I shall say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Wiedersehen, Herr Miller.